Yo, good evening. Good evening. Wish Potato, good evening to you. Danny, good evening to you. What's good? Morning there. Sarah, what's up? A2C, hello. The whole gang's here. The whole gang's here. How was work? Yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day, busy week. As you can imagine, like being back after a long time, there's lots to catch up on, lots to do. But yeah, it's good. I'm in good spirits. Got a good energy. So it's all G. And yeah, looking forward to doing a bit of streaming tonight. And then yeah, see how we feel tomorrow. Should be alright though. Should be alright. Yeah, always illustrations for me. I don't really do concept art anymore. It's not that I wouldn't do it. If the right thing came along and someone thought I was actually capable of doing it, then I would do it. But yeah, I'm not. It's not something I look for necessarily. Although I'm enjoying doing like environments quite a bit. So yeah. Alrighty then. So we'll start off the stream with the small segment, old paintings that slap. I've got an old painting for you today that slaps. So I'm going to show you that now. Here we have After the Ball by Ramon Casas. If you've never seen this painting before, then here you go. Wonderful painting. Some really lovely brush strokes in this. Some beautiful lost edges. And yeah, it's just yeah, relatable for sure. Yeah. Yeah, really beautiful, like just like deft brushwork. You can't really tell from this so much, but there's a lot of areas on this, I think here and here, that are very, very thin paint, very kind of scumbled, you know. And then we've got some beautiful lost edges, and yeah, just basically very, very, very juicy painting. Lovely composition, kind of really quite a modern aesthetic for an older painting. You know, you could really imagine this being done as a contemporary thing. Do I see some phthalo blue in the background and shadows? It could well be a phthalo blue. Yeah, mixed with something darker, for sure. How are you, Yukino? I'm good, thank you. Very good. How are you? Hi there, been a while. Indeed, Ace. Indeed. How are you doing? Scumbled. Yes. Scumbling is when you it's basically dry brushing in oil paint. You know, you just have a very thin down amount of paint, and you just kind of scrub it onto the canvas to get a bit of a tone. Yeah, and it's known as scumbling. But yeah, so there you go. This concludes today's old paintings that slap. If you look up Ramon Casas, you'll see he's got some really wonderful pictures. I have one of his books at home, and it's tremendous. But yeah, beautiful painting, very, very vibrant. Was very inspiring to me when I was learning to oil paint this painting. I'm doing pretty good, mate. How have you been? Recently became an uncle. Had to help sis and family. That's really cute. That's nice. You get to be unc. All right. So, yeah, congrats, mate. Congrats. So what are we going to work on today? I have this image. This is something I've been sort of cooking up in my mind for a little while. I'm basically trying to figure out a sort of a little personal project that I want to put together. I'm not really sure what the format would take. It might, at the very least, it would just be a series of images that all go together, including some of the ones that I'd done previously on stream. I think they would fit into the project. But yeah, I don't know whether this would at some point. I just don't know how large the project will go. But for now, it's kind of, I'm cooking up the ideas, and I've got a bit of an idea for the sort of story or the lore behind it. But it's basically just going to be something that kind of ties together a lot of the pictures that I make into a series. And this way, there's a bit of kind of consistency between them, and something that I can dip into at various points for inspiration and so on. So I could talk a little bit about the sort of basis of the ideas as we go along. And but yeah, anyway, this image, I see this being the sort of initial kind of cover image for the project, and for this reason, I want this to work in a crop kind of like this, and also in a more cinematic crop like this. And basically, if I was going to give you the TLDR of the project, imagine a kind of Dark Souls-esque kind of universe, where a very powerful witch has like fallen from the lands above or whatever, and caused this kind of devastating impact. Okay, and as years and years have passed, I mean like thousands of years have passed, a river, the source of a river, has come from that impact and has carved its way throughout the land, and because the witch fell at the source, the witch's power is in the water, and this has kind of changed the landscape, and there are many witches in the world that have been born out of eons of people drinking from the water and so on. And this has turned the world into just a very sort of dark and ominous place, right, with a lot of history, lots of witches. Anyway, so I imagine that this would be kind of like the opening cinematic of the game, kind of after the story has been told, that you are basically an undead that has died previously in battle, and the water from that source has like finally reached where your body lays, right, and you're woken up. So this would be the shot that is looking up a waterfall that has started to come through this kind of dead forest. And I imagine like this is the kind of almost like the loading screen where the menu might pop up, and so on. And it's like just a very sort of atmospheric and moody loading screen with the waterfall running, and so on. Maybe a little bit of splashes on the camera. I don't know if you ever played The Last of Us, but you know at the beginning of that, where you just have the window as the loading screen, and there's like the curtains that blow and the music playing. So this would be a kind of a similar aesthetic. So there you go. That's a little bit of the kind of the backstory here. And I would like to like call the project WitchFall. So I'm just messing around with a kind of a making up a typeface here. WitchFall basically encompasses all of it, but that's why I'd wanted to do this as kind of the cover image, because it has this waterfall on it as well, and in a way it sort of sums up the idea very succinctly, you know, essentially the water carrying the magic. And that's that. So this crop, if you like, is kind of like a, you know, almost like a box cover, kind of book cover kind of image, crop. And then this crop is a bit more sort of cinematic, ultra widescreen kind of thing. And I'm going to do the whole image, but it's going to work within those two crops. So when I was making the 3D and kind of lining up the shot for this is what I had in mind. And I really wanted these kind of very straggly trees. I think I really kind of like the, you know, the sort of writing of like a metal band that's all very gnarly and like tree roots and stuff. And I quite like that visual, you know, of the silhouette against the sky. I think it's kind of, you know, it really sums up the atmosphere that I'm going for. It's like, you know, it's just kind of gnarly and withered and old, and so on. So yeah, and yeah, I can talk a little bit about the logo, I guess. The other reason for it being like this is that my signature that I do, you know, on my artworks is like this. And so if I show you quickly. So yeah, that my Heath signature is like this, and I wanted the kind of the typeface, if you like, to be reminiscent of this, but also kind of look a little bit like it could be, yeah, like runes or, you know, some kind of more ancient magic language. And I like the idea of something like this being not immediately readable in a way. Like there is, I do kind of like that. I also really like how the sort of title comes in at the beginning of Alien, the original Alien, where it's just, you know, partial bits of letters coming in one by one, and you get this like really nice kind of spelling out of the letters. I imagine something similar. Anyway, it's all kind of doesn't really mean anything for now. So let's talk about this image a little more. Again, yo, what's up, Jeff? Yeah, let's talk about this. So I have this image. It was some 3D that I made in 3D Coat again. And yeah, I've just sort of cut all of this out with the masks. So there's all the trees separated, you know, one by one and so on. So this will help us paint. And yeah, this whole idea, going to have kind of like a waterfall kind of running down over all this, over some of the tree roots, lots of moss and sort of rocks and overgrowth and so on, and then just a very moody sky with kind of a focal point up here between the trees where the sky is going to be a bit lighter overall up there. So that's the idea. So guess we can make a start. So yeah, last stream, the crit stream, was it's a very good one. Went very well. Glad we got through it all. I keep like losing my voice after every one of those streams. So that was no exception again. But yeah, it was a very good one. I will, once I know my schedule a little bit more, I'll pick a new date for the next one, basically, and we will go from there. But I imagine it will be nearer the end of the month, or at the very beginning of next month. I know the last weekend of this month that I have a tournament, so I won't be able to do it that weekend. But I was thinking that I would do the next crit stream on a weekend, maybe do it on like a Sunday, and do like an extra long stream. So on top of me doing like a couple of evening streams during the week like this, that I would then do like one longer stream every month, on a Sunday, and make that sort of 5-6 plus hours, and yeah, the crit stream will be in one of those. But yeah, it was cool. Lots of cool work. Yeah, lots of new people joining the Discord, so that was cool. So thanks for tuning in. So other images that I will add into this project are like the swamp one that we already did, and the last kind of throne one, and also the sort of snake witch cave image. Those are ones that I will add into this project, but I might sort of revisit them and change little things about them as I sort of develop the idea of the project some more. And I need kind of like a succinct way of sort of summing it all up. But I've never kind of created my own sort of project before, so it's all a bit new to me. The whole idea of it, so you have to bear with me. Like, I usually have lots of ideas for stuff, but it's never been so much that I would like actually put them together in a project and like really pursue that, And yo, Ribians, thanks for the follow. Yeah, so it's gonna be kind of trial by fire, bit of trial and error, I guess. Yeah, by the way, if anyone's watching on YouTube, I do have the YouTube chat open as well, so feel free to participate in there if that is better for you. So on, you won't be missing out You might get bullied still, but so I'm just separating out trees here with some value. Nothing special going on there. Is there a reason? Yes, indeed. This layer, you mean? Yeah, this so that at any point I can select any of this stuff individually for whatever reason. Just makes it much easier to grab things later on. Makes sense. Yeah, mate. I only make sense. Sense is all I got. Sense, man. Exactly. Yeah, I understand what you mean, Sarah. And yeah, it really can be. And that's why I do sort of err on the side of the 3D being kind of basic. Like I really don't tend to make models that take any amount of time to do. For that reason, I want to stay kind of pretty open, and just kind of use the 3D to sort of get me to a certain place a little bit quicker. But yeah, I'm not trying to do anything too crazy with the 3D for that reason, that I retain some control over it and don't get kind of stuck, because it can happen. And yeah, I mean, my 3D skills aren't that great as well, which contributes to the models being kind of rough. But also I have to remind myself as well when I'm making 3D, is like I can actually paint most of the stuff that I need. So, you know, in this, I could even sort of sit here and paint these trees, right? It's not super difficult to do so. It's just time consuming. So I do tend to leave out a lot of things in the 3D where I'm like, do you know what? I'm actually going to paint that and design that. So, you know, this surface that the trees are on, well, flashbang everyone there. You know, you can see it's just a blob of stuff. And I didn't really go too much into thinking about how it was going to look and the sort of the rocks on it or anything like that, because I was like, I'm actually just going to paint all of those in, and like I'm going to find the design of the shape of the stream, you know, as I go by painting, because then I can direct it to where I go and I don't get caught up with what this is offering me. If I'd modeled all of the rocks all the way down here, like I don't have any way of really controlling the composition with the river, as an example. So yeah. And other places that I would use 3D, we talked about this before, but I'll go into it again, is weapons, or anything that has like a ton of ellipses that's going to be in the splash art. Ellipses can be a real pain. And like, you're never going to do them as well as just dropping in something in 3D. And the problem with something like that is they never look correct unless they are. So you just gotta be a bit smart about it. Because at the end of the day, you've got something in your illustration. It just needs to be correct. It just needs to like not stick out for being wrong. So it doesn't really matter how you got there. So these darker marks that I'm putting in right now, just to sort of explain what I'm doing here, I'm thinking about kind of rock size and placement in this kind of like waterfall area. And these are basically the shadows underneath them. So I'm putting those in as darks now, just to sort of see size and placement. And then what I will be doing is kind of putting in top surfaces and then things on top like moss and so on. But yeah, I'm just trying to sort of build up a sort of a density and stuff. You imagine lots of rocks like piled on each other with moss and stuff growing over them. Well, these are just like the darker shadows underneath those rocks. So yeah, that works pretty well. Give me one sec. Have you watched The Night of the Seven Kingdoms? No, what's that? Tell me about it, young squire. A new show taking place in the Game of Thrones universe. Is it? You might find this surprising or not, but I actually don't like Game of Thrones. Hot take for you. Okay, let's think about a bit of water pathing in here. Do you know, I do like behind the scenes stuff. I'd watch behind the scenes for shows that I don't even watch. More interesting than the shows most of the time. So just using this brush, and I'm kind of putting, I guess, water in, but I'm going to do it as a flat shape first. Kind of figure out the flow and the general sort of composition that the water's going to take, and then I can use this shape to kind of paint inside of and work out shadows and so on. Mate, I always choose the music to go with the stream. Always. It's not by accident. It's nice to have music that fits, though, you know? Get you in the mood. If I was just on my own, I would put some like trickling water or rain and wind or something like that on, but where do I get the music from? I can drop some links. It's just on YouTube. It ain't nothing special. It's probably AI, to be honest. It's foggy where I am. Yeah, the fog's coming in here too. It's going to be a foggy cycle home. Try not to get like too carried away with the water, but it's hard not to. Let's have a quick look at the crops actually as well. That's helpful. Yeah, that one. Fine. Fine. Okay. Have to remember the perspective a little bit, but that will happen more so when I put in some shadows on this stuff. Because right now it's just a flat shape, so it's like crazy, you know? Crazy. How do you manage to cycle in this weather, man? I tried to go for a little walk. Instant float. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's my British constitution, I guess. It's always raining, isn't it? So used to it. I'm used to it. It's like the sleeper activation phrase for us Americans in the chat. Yeah, it's the sleeper cell activation constitution. The second time there's been mention of sleeper cells. I don't know. You might be in trouble. Okay, well, let's run with this water shapes for now. Can always change them later on. So they are on their own layer. Essentially trying to get something, you know, a little bit interesting, but not too interesting. As a flat shape. And then because it's a flat shape, I can then clip stuff inside of it. And yeah, we can paint on the inside of it. Bucky Barnes. Don't know if I get the reference. So there is going to be like a little bit of white water, but this is like not an overtly sort of rough running stream or anything. This is like, this water has only just started to run over here. It's been traveling, a long time, and it's probably filling up kind of what is now a lake at the top of this, and it's just got to the point where it's starting to spill over the top, and that's why it's only just kind of activated our kind of main character in the game. So it's water that's very, very old. And I'm painting inside the shape here, doing a few things. I'm leaving the sort of sky-facing surfaces a bit lighter and giving the impression of maybe some, white water, or a little bit of white water. But then where it's falling over the rocks here, like here, for example, it's very translucent, and so it goes a lot darker in places. And if I mix up a little bit of, where it's darker and lighter, it will sort of give the impression that like, oh, there's like a rock under the water that's a bit closer to the surface, but not quite broken through. And I have been looking at reference for this, not while I'm painting, but before the stream. Well, it was this morning actually, that I was looking at reference, and I will do this when I intend to paint something, but I try not to paint with the reference open when I'm actually painting. I always try and, as much as I can, paint without the reference present, and look at it, before I intend to do the picture, and then try and paint from memory. And this is two things: trying to get references to stay in my head. So there's kind of one way to help doing that. And the other is similarly why, I'd use like rough 3D as opposed to really nicely made and rendered 3D and stuff, is that I only want to be influenced enough by the reference to sort of make certain decisions about the way things look. But I don't want to just copy reference. I'm good at copying things, so if it's in front of me and I'm not really paying attention so much, I'm going to copy the thing, whether I like it or not. So if I have to do it out of my head, then I can just think a little bit more about kind of what it is that I'm actually trying to achieve, and I can design it a bit more, I guess. That's the word I'm looking for. Oh, what on earth is going on here? There we go. Do you think it's good practice to not color pick while doing landscape paintings? I think if you are doing a study and the intention of that study is to learn color, then you shouldn't color pick, because you're not training yourself to figure out what the color is. But if you're doing a study and the intention is to say like stylize shapes, for example, then I wouldn't bother then I would color pick, because that's not the intention of the study, you know. I think it's just all about what you're intending to do, you know, and sticking to that particular thing. I think that with studies as well, I think you're better off trying to sort of separate things out. Separate things out and do a study aimed at doing a particular thing, and make that the only focus of the study. I think you can overdo the intention in a study and have too many things to juggle, or you end up just kind of copying stuff. Sorry, what am I trying to say? I think, you know, limit what the study's about and just study that one thing in the study itself. And if the study is not to do with color, then color pick. If it is to do with color, then definitely don't color pick. You won't learn anything color picking if color is the intention. You'll only surface level do things, but you'll essentially just kind of copy the picture in a kind of way. You won't retain much of it. I think the important thing as well with doing studies is to do your study, but then immediately afterwards, or sometime afterwards, do something where you have to recall the study from imagination. So a lot of the times I would do a study. Let's say I've painted a waterfall, right? As a study, then that would be the perfect time for me to come on stream and paint a waterfall, because I'm directly using it in the work that I'm doing, and therefore I'm forcing myself to recall it, because, like I said, just doing studies and then not trying to recall it, you may as well have not really done the study, to be honest. Like, the whole point of it is being able to recall it. That's why you do them. So yeah, I guess just don't get caught up in doing like all the hard work of setting up, doing a study and putting time aside to do it, and then kind of cheating yourself by not really going at it with intention. You can do a lot of fake studying. Fake study still feels good as well, so you think you're doing it, but you won't actually recall anything. That's the bad part about it. So yeah, I'm trying to leave a lot of nice brush strokes and stuff in the waterfall here. I want it to have a painterliness about it overall. It's actually very relaxing painting this water, I've got to say. Sleep stream incoming. Yeah, I would say, like, if you are looking to uh, learn color, uh, I think one of the best things that you can do for that is to actually mix real paint. There's something about the act of having to mix real paint and colors in real paint that kind of forces you to engage with the process a little bit more, which you can replicate. You can replicate in digital a little bit, but it's not quite the same. All right, hang on, let me duplicate this and try that shape again. Always duplicate the layers if you're going to do a quick experiment. But yeah, you can study color kind of all the time if you take a moment to kind of see what's around you, and just to ask yourself a few questions. You know, when you're learning to mix colors with real paint, for example, you're always asking yourself, like, what's the value, what's the hue, and what's the saturation? And you can do that without having any paints in front of you. Just when you're out and about, if you're on the bus or whatever, on the train, commuting somewhere, you can just, you know, look at a particular thing and ask yourself those questions and try and figure it out in your mind, kind of what they are. Obviously, if you've got something to mix colors with, that's great, but you don't have to do that. You are just trying to identify what those three things are and do that kind of consistently. But yeah, nothing beats actually going out there and painting from life for that kind of stuff. Mixing real paint as well really helps. Whoa, ah. Whoa, ah. So now I'm grabbing a sort of a color that is a little bit closer to that of the sky. This kind of slightly bluer gray. And I've got this brush that's kind of got a bit of noise to it. And any rocks that are kind of wet, right? Kind of slick and wet, just from this being a very sort of humid place. The top surfaces of those gonna catch, because they're wet, they're gonna reflect the sky to some degree. So they're gonna get this sort of slightly grayer tone on them. And the flatter those rocks are to my angle of view, the more reflective they are going to seem to be. So the lighter they're going to be. So, for example, this guy here, this plane is kind of facing like this, right? But this plane is much flatter to my angle of view. So, you know, as I'm looking at this one, my eye, you know, the light from the sky, the light from the sky, you know, it's hitting this and then bouncing towards my eye. But if I was to tip the rock backwards even more, like this one, it starts to look a lot more reflective because it's wet in this scenario. And yeah, we've gone over this before, but this is known as the Fresnel effect. And if you can keep that in the back of your mind when rendering surfaces, it's just one of the things that if you keep in mind, you will kind of intuitively understand like what values that you should pick for certain things. And I think that's, you know, I guess rendering is just the kind of remembering all of those little bits of knowledge to help you understand what value something should be at any given point in the illustration. So some of these rocks is kind of a layer that I'm going to do kind of after this top surface painting, is go back in and sort of think about any sort of moss or lichen or anything that's growing on them. And that will be like a sort of a different brush and a different layer. But right now I'm just trying to, think about, you know, which rocks are facing which way, how reflective they are, and just trying to make like one nice kind of painterly stroke that sort of defines one plane and not really overdo them. You know, you can see trying to do sort of one stroke for one plane, as we go up, and just keeping those strokes varied. So some are thinner, some are thicker and larger. The edge of the stroke, these gaps and stuff is giving us a little bit of extra detail, right? It's kind of telling us a little bit about a rock's surface there. And this is what's going to give us a very sort of painterly finish in the end, is this sort of visible brush strokes and the brush texture itself, like telling us a little bit about the surface. Now the difficulty is not to repeat similar size, shape and direction with your strokes. Try and vary that up a little bit. So that's something I'm trying to kind of be conscious of, and that's why I keep flipping it and turning it. Just trying to spot any of those patterns that might come up from doing something like this. I'm also looking at, some of these should be really big, some of these should be really small, some of them kind of mid in between, and I'll turn them on and off. It's just starting to define planes, and I've got a nice bit of hue variation coming in here as well. This brush that I used here to just put down these strokes is very nice because it has hue variation built into it. But I had some really nice hues from the render. I rendered this material as a slightly translucent kind of green material, almost like a sort of a green rubber almost. And the HDRI that I used to light it was kind of like an overcast sky. So it has a little bit of these kind of bluey sky reflections in it, but it has like a nice mix of greens. Like, show you. There's like these greens, and then they go a little bit bluer, more turquoise, and so on. So there's all of these really nice hues that are in that underlying layer. And then I'm using that hue jitter brush, and that's bringing up some really nice little strokes here and there, and different colors, and that's what's giving it like just a little bit more richness in the palette. There's even like, see here, browns, greens, blues, etc. And that's just going to make it feel very natural in the end. And I'm thinking back to kind of landscape paintings that I like. Ones that I'm really into, and how they have these strokes everywhere to describe something that's, this big pile of kind of slaty rocks with moss and everything on it. It's a complicated thing if you really think about it, but I'm trying to simplify it into brush strokes, and get a sort of a very painterly quality about it. And I'm thinking back to landscape paintings that I like for that. And landscape painting myself, something I used to do quite a bit. It's fun, man, it's fun. I used to crash out so bad when I was landscape painting outside. Are you going for a very rendered look or more of a painterly style for this piece? Definitely painterly overall. Like, the trees are going to get a very sort of painterly kind of finish to them, and yeah, all these rocks are going to be very loose and painterly. Like, that is the intention. The project as a whole is going to have a nice kind of painterliness to it. You know, I think I sort of call this thing sort of like stylized realism. Like, the lighting effects, if you like, are meant to evoke the feeling of realism, but the way that everything's painted is just going to be quite loose, you know. Yeah, getting sand in your paint is awful, but yeah, damn, I would crash out. I would get hella frustrated. I think part of it as well is that I would have a certain idea in my mind of, you know, like a kind of a composition that I was looking for, and I would spend ages trying to find that, and that is very sort of antithetical to the whole idea, I think. You know, that you're going out into nature to like find something that catches your eye, right? And paint that. You're not meant to go out with like a preconceived idea of like, there's a painting I want to paint and I'm going to go and look for that place, you know? So I think that would usually be a big source of my frustration, is going out there with that crazy idea of like, I'm going to find this composition outside. It doesn't really work like that. Oh yeah, your easel blows over, and your painting you've been working on is like face down. I've had that happen. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, on some of these rocks there's going to be like, ended up switching to one of those watercolor pens, keeps the water inside of itself, and using dry paint palettes and mitigate the sand. Yeah, they're pretty good. I've taken one of those out and with gouache before, and it's quite good. Although I didn't paint landscape, I ended up painting like orcs in my sketchbook. Took it out with the intention of doing some landscape painting, and then ended up in a pub painting orcs in my sketchbook. Derp. Never actually painted outside. Seems really daunting drawing while outside. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to paint outside. You just go out and draw and do whatever. It's great in the summer, though. Yeah, it was good. I studied at the atelier. We go out on the weekend. A few of us, big setup, take loads of food, take a few canvases in a box, go out and paint, and then go to the pub afterwards. It's pretty good. Nice way to spend a summer's day. So there's going to be some like moss and like lichen on these as well. So we'll get some of that in. Maybe even some ferns here and there. I do like ferns. I like ferns. Are you working for League of Legends? No, I am not. I am not. I have done in the past, but I currently am not. Sorry, more accurately, I've worked for Riot on various projects, but I've not actually ever worked on League of Legends. Worked on some of the other IPs like based around League of Legends, but not actually League itself. I would love to do just one splash for the game, just one. Tick it off my list. I guess I saw a video of you analyzing a few LOL splash art on Moon Colony Live, but can't find the video. Was it you or I dreamed of it? I think I did, like talk about a few of them when I was talking about composition once on their live stream. So it could have been that. I'm not sure if they keep all of their live streams around, indefinitely. But yeah, I've definitely talked about the composition of certain splash artworks before, and it was probably on the I was talking. Was I talking about the gin splash, the base splash for gin rather? What champ would you want if you could pick? Oh damn. Yeah, I probably Jin would definitely be up there for me. That would be interesting, I think. Who else? I would love to do maybe Senna. Just I think Senna's design with the big weapon would be quite fun to do as a splash. Because it's like a big shape that you have to kind of manage within the composition, and I think that would be quite a fun challenge. But also it just enables you to do sort of big graphic shape in the composition, and I kind of like that aspect of it. Yes, A2C. Yeah, that is Jin's splash, Jin's base splash. So yeah, that would have been me talking about it, because any opportunity to talk about the storytelling in that splash, I take, because I think it's one of their better ones, honestly. Whether intentional or not, the composition is peak. I can't get over Kale and Morgana's design. I love to do something for them. Oh yeah, you've mentioned that before, actually. Actually, love me some winged armored characters. Yeah, I absolutely love Set's base splash. Would love to get your opinion on that too. Yeah, that is cool. That is very cool. I like that one a lot. I'm a sucker for like that kind of composition, person in chair. I was a long time ago. I'll say a long time ago. It wasn't that long. Yeah, I was trying to come up with a kind of a splash art and a character, and I always gravitate back to that sort of composition, person in chair kind of composition, and I still haven't really done one and finished one that's like that. I would like to. Something about it. Yeah, I don't know. I'll grab them. I've got them here. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I dumped a whole load of sketches on ArtStation today. Just ones that have been sitting on my hard drive for a little while that I'm not going to go back to, or at least not in their current form. But yeah, this one is that kind of person in chair composition that I quite like, and yeah, this one as well. Again, similar thing. It's just something about it. It's quite enigmatic, you know. Certain compositions just keep cropping up over and over. This one I was thinking of a character that is like a maker of puppets, and this would be sort of his workshop, and he's sort of lazing in there, and yeah, these puppets are kind of imbued with magic, so they're actually somewhat alive. So it's this kind of like creepy workshop, and this guy kind of looking at the face of this one. Yeah, and this is Lady Geist from Deadlock. Yeah, sketches that. I mean, this one ended up. This sketch, I worked on it again here, and then it eventually became this one. So it did make it out. It did make it out of the vault eventually. It took a few attempts trying different stuff to get it out. So maybe this one or this one might make it out eventually. So yeah. Yeah, I noticed there's one in your sketch. Yeah, really like the space pieces in that upload, by the way. I was staring at them for ages earlier. Yeah, I'll read a sci-fi book that I like, and then I feel compelled to do some kind of drawing or explanation of something that happened in it. I've got a few more on my hard drive of various things, various bits from sci-fi books where I'm like, ooh, I want to draw what that particular thing looks like, or I want to draw that scene, and so on. So yeah, 3-body problem was like that for me. I had to kind of do some experiments there to help me picture in my mind what I was reading about. You know what I mean? Yeah, sometimes you just got to draw it down, haven't you? Get kind of. It's usually things where I have sort of trouble picturing it in my head, and I have to be like, wait, I need to draw this down, kind of figure it out. Okay, let's get a bit of moss going, shall we? Yeah, or sometimes my cousin, he'll be reading a sci-fi book and then he'll tell me about, I don't know, like a part in it, and I'll be like, oh damn, that sounds cool. And then we'll get talking about it, and then he'll be like, hey, can you draw that bit, or can you draw that character? Like, I can't picture what it looks like. So then he'll kind of rope me into drawing something. Don't know if you've ever read the... Oh, what happened there? If you've ever read a book called The Algebraist by Ian M. Banks. But tremendous book. It's got some really cool characters and concepts in it. But yeah, that was one where I was like, oh man, I need to draw like everything in this book. That is a book that if they were like announced that they were going to make a film for it, I'd be trying to send a portfolio off to do concept art for the film, because I think some of that stuff is really sort of embedded in my head. I'm like, I got to be involved. Some Deadlock drawings. Oh yeah, the graphic design of Deadlock makes me want to go back to designing. Yeah, Deadlock's shaping up to be a very cool looking game. I like the aesthetic a lot. I've no interest in playing it. But I do think it looks aesthetically pleasing. The soundtrack. Okay. Can't say I've really paid any attention to the soundtrack. I'll have to give it a little listen. Valve got them orchestras cooking. Yeah. Do love a game soundtrack. Sorry, give me a sec. Defo check the Hidden King intro soundtrack. Okay, all right. I'll do it. Yeah, I do like a good soundtrack to listen to while working. As a break from, other stuff that I listen to. Look, painterly goodness. Painterly goodness. Some of these mosses are sticking out a little bit too much. I don't want there to be like lots of moss everywhere because I think it gives it a bit of a friendlier vibe with the moss. Might desaturate it a tiny bit. Alright, got to go. Have a nice rest of your day. Yeah, you too, mate. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your viewership. I'm trying to, these patches of moss, trying to also give them a little bit more of a designed kind of shape. Bit of a brush stroke kind of shape to them. Although there is a bit more sort of going on with them that, moss doesn't necessarily grow in nice sharp shapes. But I'm still trying to give it a little bit of that because it's got to fit in with the sort of more designed painterly kind of ethos that the rest of it has. Do like moss though. I've got a terrarium at home with, well, I say terrarium, like I guess it is kind of a terrarium for my insect at home, and it's got some moss in it and it's all growing in there and it looks very cool. But yeah, I want to keep the moss kind of lower down because as it's higher up, I want it to just be a bit more like bare rock and a bit more kind of exposed, Don't want the moss to give the impression that it's like full of life. This place should feel a little bit on the desolate side. It's kind of got to sum up the project in one image, So probably desaturate this this moss even more because the greens just kind of make it a little bit more friendly. So let's desaturate it a little bit more. Yeah, this feels a little bit better. It's coming along all right, isn't it? Coming along all right, not bad. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that you know, streaming in the evenings now. It means I can't do streams that are like as long. But not to worry, as long as we can fit them in. So I'm going to sort of paint on the inside of these tree shapes now with this more sort of painterly brush. Really start to sort of give us a bit of brush stroke kind of finish on the inside of these. And yeah, just kind of improve the look of them a little bit, make them all fit in. The idea being that everything's going to be sort of painterly by the end. You see, like, paint into the branches here, give them a bit more dimension and form, kind of give them the impression of a little bit of bark and so on. And we'll do this, you know, in all of the trees. And it should, yeah, kind of blend that 3D in with everything else. This is why it's good to have kind of low fidelity 3D and something like this, in my estimation. You can better match all these things together. It's much easier. And then later, on top of like everything, I can come back in and, you know, we can lose some of these edges. Like, for example, if I just make a quick layer on top, these kind of edges can sort of paint into a little more, and in some places like lose that edge into the background a bit, get rid of anything that looks kind of like pixely, you know, get that a nice painted edge like that, for example. They'll look proper smart by the end of it. You know, something like this. So if I turn that on and off, that's how we'll kind of integrate everything at the very end. But for now, we'll just work inside of silhouettes. Basically, how we work with everything. Yeah, I basically work this way with everything. Work inside of silhouettes in the beginning. It can be very quick, you know. That's what I quite like about it. You know, this whole painting, from, you know, conception of idea to 3D, and then eventually the painting is not a very long process, really. And more I appreciate like a process that doesn't take too long. It still has like a quality to it, but it doesn't take forever to render. I don't mind rendering when it's going in a kind of in the forward direction, but certain rendering can be really, really, really boring, I think. Yeah, we'll put a bit more extra special effort into this one, as it's the, like I was saying, the sort of the cover image for this little project of mine. So it's got to be a little bit special, you know. And to me, this kind of aesthetic's really nice, where it's like it has kind of realistic sensibilities about it in terms of lighting and so on. But you know, when you look at it, it's actually a lot looser and more brushstrokey in nature. And once all the trees are like that as well, should look like a really nice painting overall. Yeah, it's got a slap. It's got a slap. So it's coming up to 7. So we got about 45 minutes left for today. It's gone very quick. It's not quite a 4-hour stream like we used to be able to do, but I'll take it. Yeah, there is another like painting that is, I guess, if you imagine this is like one area, like the starting area that would go along with this painting, that I could do, which I plan, I think, to do after this one. But what I'll do is I'll paint it all from the start, so there won't be any 3D in that one. It's still like sort of a trees, misty kind of foresty area, like this, but I will paint the whole thing instead, because it's going to be kind of quite a sort of windswept kind of foresty area, and I think it would benefit from having all of the shapes painted so that there is much more of a flow to the overall composition. Like with this one, I wanted it to have this really sort of gnarly, you know, almost hard to look at kind of overlapping with the noisiness of the trees. Like that is an intentional look that I wanted, because it needed to feel kind of still and old, but to have a sort of a gnarliness to it, so that the world seems kind of unkind in the project. Do you know what I mean? And I felt that if I hand drew those, it was going to be quite hard to get something that felt natural with the look I was going for. Whereas if I generate the trees in 3D, they're going to feel like trees, and I get that sort of noisiness from nature that I was looking for. But in the sort of next one, yeah, it's kind of like a windswept, kind of, misty, damp kind of forest, kind of like when you get trees near the coast and they all kind of bend in the wind and grow into the wind like that. So it sort of lends itself to being a bit more sort of painterly in the outset, and the composition can be a bit more contrived, and it still makes sense. But yeah, for this one it needed that sort of that grittiness that you get in nature, where things aren't actually a nice composition always. That makes sense. Because we tend to sort of contrive of composition in the artwork. We tend to sort of design things differently from nature, and sometimes that sort of gnarliness and that seemingly more random stuff that you get in nature is actually sometimes what's needed in a composition. So for example, I generate these trees, right, using the tree tool in 3D Coat, and so there is an element of the design of them that is out of my control, and that gives me a sort of inherent randomness that I wouldn't necessarily have made had I painted them by hand, if that makes sense. And in terms of like game design, I think if I'm thinking about this as a game, that in the very beginning, your first impression of it should be sort of kind of unfriendly and, kind of unapproachable in a way. And something like this kind of gives you that feeling, like you very first boot up the game and there's this sort of inherent unfriendliness about it. But then as you go into like an area where the player's kind of learning to play, things start to get a little bit more contrived in composition. So it sort of has a little bit of slight bit more friendliness, user friendliness coming into it, if that makes sense. You're probably like, what the hell is he talking about? But it makes sense in my head. Thanks for still doing the streams. Oh no, I really wanted to. It's been a very, very liberating experience for me, coming back to streaming and doing the streams again. I've really enjoyed it. It's been very productive for me, and kind of reignited a bit of passion, I think, for making artworks and doing stuff for myself, So I appreciate that you like them and watch them, very much so. But yeah, it's been great for me too. So getting back into them. And listen, I'd do them full time if I could make a living off of the streams. I would do them, yeah, full time. And maybe that is possible at some point. Need a bit more savings, I think. Dun, dun, dun. Oh yeah, much better. Much better. So it doesn't even take that long to paint into them. These trees can get a little bit of like moss and so on going on inside them as well. But yeah, it's nice. They're going to have this very painterly kind of finish to them overall, like this. And at the very end will like I said, paint over the top of everything and really integrate edges and so on. You know, all of this stuff kind of make it make sense basically. But that's kind of a thing to happen near the end. Kind of a finishing touches kind of thing. For now, got to paint inside most of these silhouettes. Get a little bit of kind of sky reflection on some of these as well. Where they get, again, they're like a little bit wet, a little bit misty. Yeah, I've always found it kind of amazing that you know, you can look at something in real life, realistic, and then you can look at like a painting of that and still have the same same feeling that like, oh, I'm looking at something realistic, but it's not, you know. Or when you look at something far away and you're like, oh yeah, that looks like you know, this kind of landscape, but then you look at it close up and it's just brush strokes, and they're just, you know, kind of very well put, the right values, the right colors, etc. I do like that. So yeah, not much in the way of tutorials in this stream, but I do have something that we can cover in another one. I'd mentioned it the other day, but I didn't get around to it in the crit stream because we just had too many crits to do. But yeah, I wanted to do a little thing on cast shadows, so I'll try and see if we can maybe squeeze that in tomorrow. So it's a little bit more interesting for all of you. I literally started looking at some of my old wintry photos of the Lake District because this was starting to look so much how I remembered it already. Lake District is lovely, beautiful place. But yeah, I've said before, I tend to like paintings where the values are really kind of constrained and tight, and I really like overcast days for that same reason. Everything's like very, very condensed, you know. So yeah, now that tree is pretty much, I'd say pretty much, then I see this. Swine. So the trees are near the top of the composition, they're barely going to get touched, right? Because they're basically just silhouettes. I'll like paint into them later to kind of, you know, give this a nicer edge. But they won't need much painting on the inside of. Similarly, these trees that are like one stage further back, they don't need as much as these ones in the front. So it really there isn't like a ton to do. But yeah, so that's kind of it before. That's kind of the tree as it comes out of the render. Then this is just a lighten layer that knocks back the darkest value a little bit. You can still adjust that. And then this is the painting on top, which now starts to really take into account the flow and the lighting and so on. And yeah, just introduce something that has a bit more movement to the eye and just more pleasing to look at. And there's some really nice hue variations in there from the render. These kind of blues and purples. There's some nice browns and greens in there. It's just a very sort of rich palette overall, so it's quite nice. Yeah, yeah, dappled light. Yeah, I've done paintings with dappled light. Quite a few. It can be a little bit difficult to get to read. You know, if you have like dappled light going over someone's face, for example, it's quite difficult to have the patches of light read and not just look like you're creating kind of strange forms all over the person. Yeah, there's like a point at which it sort of breaks and doesn't work. You have to be quite careful with it. You just also have to be, I think, quite selective about where those pools of light are. Like a face is one of those places that it can really start reading very strangely. It takes a little bit of back and forth to get working, but it's a really nice light effect to paint. Very sort of cinematic. Lets you get sort of nice juicy colours in certain places. But yeah, it's a challenge for sure. How comes are you looking to do that for one of your tarot cards or something? Some dappled light. It ain't easy. It ain't easy. No, I was just curious since those values are pretty harsh usually, and you mentioned preferring values the other way around. Yeah, it's work's been so crazy lately that I haven't painted in like over a week, unfortunately. Oh no, that's a shame. Yeah, it's not that I necessarily like prefer, you know, really sort of tight value range. It's just something that I am drawn to. But I do like all sorts of lighting conditions and so on. And yeah, I mean most of the work that I do for work is like very colourful, you know, and has a lot of interesting light effects and that kind of stuff. So when I come to like do my own stuff, tends to be a little bit more muted of late, just because, you know, work isn't, I guess. I mean, it's not surprising. Obviously, there's quite a lot of very like colourful stuff in my portfolio. So, I do it. I do it all the time. Which is funny because I'm not really like someone that's sort of. I don't wear loads of colours. I basically wear black all the time. You know, I'm not really into like really super colourful stuff. I don't own like really colourful things. It's but then I paint really colourful, bright, saturated stuff a lot of the time for work. So, do you feel like your personal work is easier on your eyes compared to work stuff, like eye strain because of colours and what? I don't know. Like I said, a lot of my personal work in my portfolio is all very bright. I don't really have a sort of an issue with it when it comes to that stuff. I thankfully have got very good eyesight. I don't tend to get like eye strain so much. I get eye infections all the time. But that's, I think, because I just touch my face all the time. It's like a nervous thing. Do you have any advice around not second-guessing an artwork too much? It seems you had a very strong vision for this piece and moved from concept to creation quite fast. I think I would find it difficult to commit to things like the tree shapes. Do you have any advice for not second-guessing artwork too much? I think, yeah, I mean, how should I put this? I think if I conceive of the idea before I commit to putting anything down, then that second guessing doesn't really come into it, because I've set that sort of intention from the beginning of like, oh, I want to do this kind of image, and I have a picture of it in my head, you know, and therefore, kind of each stage, I'm just embarking on getting closer to that. But if I sort of sit down and instead of like conceiving of the idea in my mind, I just sort of start drawing things and going back and forth like that. Yeah, I enter kind of what I refer to as the sandbox, which is like, you know, I'm a kid sat in the sandbox and I can just build and destroy anything I want, right? And that freedom of choice in the sandbox, I find quite debilitating when it comes to personal work. It can be fun to just sort of open up Photoshop and experiment for a little bit and come up with sketches. But a lot of those things that I've like put in that sketchbook dump today are images where I sat down without really an intention, and I just sort of entered the sandbox and messed around, and they became ultimately difficult to finish past a certain point, and that's why they've just been left as sketches. So I think my advice really, and my advice that I've been sort of trying to give myself, is that, you know, if I want to finish a piece of work, I want to finish a painting or whatever, then I need to take some time to really conceive of the idea first, you know, and maybe I'll do like a very rough composition sketch in my sketchbook, which is what I often do for these kind of things. But I'm not going to sort of sit on Photoshop or sit in 3D and just kind of sandbox it, because that is where I can't commit to decisions, and I will just keep kind of almost like pulling the slot wheel, pulling the roulette wheel, pulling the slot machine lever, and just being like, well, let's try this thing, and let's try that, and try this, etc. So yeah, I think try and do things with intention. Try and conceive of the idea away from Photoshop, and, you know, even write down a little bit of a brief for yourself with what you're trying to do. I think these things can really help you to not second guess yourself. I think the other thing as well, which I've mentioned many times before, is having a process as well. It really helps to alleviate concerns you might have about finishing a piece of work and getting to a certain quality with it. Like, ultimately, at this point in this image, it is really just about the aesthetics of the finish. Like, I conceived of the idea beforehand. I did like a very, very rough scribble in my sketchbook, and then went into 3D and I built the shapes, and then I bring it over to Photoshop, and really this is all just about making nice brush marks that I want to look at and give it its kind of finish. So the process is all separated out, and there isn't anything to second guess. The image is done. Do you know what I mean? I'm just making it look nice. And that's because there was intention with what I was making. I'm not trying to discover what I'm making as I'm making it, which I'm not saying you shouldn't do, but to me, more often than not, that leads to the sort of thing that you're pointing out, where you second guess what you're doing and you try lots of different things and you can't kind of commit to something. I think that's what happens there. That definitely mirrors my experience. That helps a lot. Thank you. You're welcome. It's an interesting thing. Yeah, it's something I've thought about quite a bit as well. And, you know, it's annoying. It's very easy. It's laziness on my part, right? I will have some time. I will just open up Photoshop and just kind of unintentionally doodle, or like I have an idea, but it won't be anything formed. It will just be like, oh, I want to draw that character from that game. So I just sort of start noodling around and doing that. And it's like all of the thumbnail ideas come up eventually, but I'm only sort of like half committed to each one, and it just, yeah, it turns into a mess very quickly. Which is weird because I don't really do that with work, but I think there's like an added pressure with work stuff to deliver. So I tend to like, even if I sit there and just start, like there's already the sort of, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just concentration. I guess I don't know. But yeah, it's not easy to like conceive of things before you do them. I'm definitely not someone that really clearly pictures things in my head. But the I think definitely I will sort of conceive of like the mood in my mind, if that makes sense. And a rough scribble in the sketchbook can kind of generally guide me in the way that the shapes should be, or the general composition should be. And then that seems to sort of set the intention from there quite well. But I think I have confidence in as much as I know I can get something to a certain level. So the rendering part of that I'm never really so worried about. I'm aware that if I follow my process I will get a certain quality of picture, and so yeah. Mad Concepts, yo, what's up? How you doing? You've caught us near the end of the stream, but I very much appreciate you coming along. Hope you're doing well. Just woke up from post-food nap like a goober. Oh no. Yeah, when you have that like nap and you wake up and it's been like 4 hours and not half an hour, you're like, oh no, I've ruined today. I think I like to leave the door open, so to speak. Like I assume I will change stuff later because I don't trust the first idea, but then all I do is change it and not finish it. And definitely worse when I work digitally. Thank you, this really helps to think about. Definitely diabetic. Yeah, it's... There's time and a place to sort of sandbox for sure. Like it can be quite nice to just sort of mess around and see what comes out, and that's where I end up doing stuff that is like a bit more sort of like abstract and or doesn't use my kind of process, and I sort of come up with interesting stuff that way, but I find that stuff very difficult to finish, or know how to finish it, because it was kind of unclear in the beginning. Yeah, we're just getting brush strokey up in here. Okay, we got about 10 more mins. Yeah, 10 more mins. We got some good amount of heavy lifting done. Good amount of heavy lifting done on this one. The really nice part of this is going to be once kind of painted inside all of the shapes, is just going around and like playing with the edges, painting over the top of it, doing that kind of stuff. It's going to be a very pleasant part of the painting. Because the colors are like so muted on this, even though the greens here are like, they're not that green. They really like, see, they're not like really saturated or anything, but they like jump out at me so much. So let's have a look at this with the crop lines. Oh yeah. Nice. And then the vertical one. Golly. Yeah, I'm liking the brush strokes in here. I think it needs some like, much smaller kind of mini strokes in places. I bet the twigs from those branches would be extra crunchy if you stepped on them. Yeah, for real. You ain't sneaking up on no one if you tread on one of those. Your stealth archer build. Yeah, so I was thinking in this world, right? It's all based on witches, and I was thinking maybe there's not even any like blades in this world. Everyone is just uses wands, but the way that you would use wands, like magic has a sort of kinetic aspect to it, where if you cast a spell but without any sort of vigor behind doing it, the travel speed of it would be really slow. So there's kind of like, although there isn't, or maybe there could be melee weapons, but there is this kind of like kinetic nature to casting spells that kind of mimics having weapons. So you could still have like a great sword but it's a wand, and you have to sort of two-hand it because it's massive, and you still need to sort of swing it as you cast spells because there is this kind of kinetic nature to them. So you could still have these kind of like fights that are like feel like melee combat. but they're not. I have to go, but it was nice to catch the whole stream again. The progress is insane. It already looks awesome. I love the project idea and can't wait to see the rest. Good night. Thanks, Yukino. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good rest of your evening. So remind me, the source of the magic here is the water. It is the source of magic is basically like a fallen witch that has like fallen at the source of a river, and so the river, the water, carries the magic inside of it. And this has like changed the world over thousands of years. So all the people that have been drinking the water, have some amount of magic powers, and the most powerful of them have become witches themselves. And like the whole game would basically be like following this river from where you wake up at the very bottom as like an undead that has been brought back to life through the magic of the water, seeking power and traveling up the river back to the source. You know what I mean? Alrighty. But yeah, we can talk about it more tomorrow evening when we continue. Let's do a little quick recap of what we did today. Do a little before and after. Okay, so this is where we started at with the render, and this is where we are currently at with the overpainting. So before and after, before and after. So yeah, we made some pretty decent progress. It's looking pretty nice. So tomorrow we'll continue on with it some more. Let's turn these layers back on. And then I'm going to have to love you and leave you. Alrighty. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, catch you later. Peace.